Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today our story continues. We're going to continue from where we left off the other time. So we're going to continue from chapter 2 of our story entitled The Secret of the Old Clock. Please relax, lay back, find a comfortable chair to sit on and read with me. We begin with the story title, A Missing Wall. So we read, the blue convertible sped along the country road. Nancy smiled grimly. I am afraid I'm exceeding the speed limit, she thought, but I'm almost wish a trooper would stop me. Then I could tell him what happened to the poor Turner sister. Nancy watched the tire marks which the van driven by the thieves had evidently made in the dirt road. But a few miles further on, a feeling of dismay came over her. She had reached a V-shaped intersection of two highways. Both roads were paved, and since no tire impressions could be seen, Nancy did not know which highway the thieves had taken. Oh dear, she sighed. Now what shall I do? Nancy concluded that her wisest move could be to take the road which led to River Heights. There was a state police barracks which just a few miles ahead. I will stop there and report the debt. She kept looking for the van, which she recalled as charcoal gray. I wish I'd seen the license number or the name of the firm that owns the van, Nancy said to herself ruefully. When she reached State Police headquarters, Nancy introduced herself to Captain Runcie and told about the robbery, giving what meager information she could about the suspect. The officer promised to send out an alarm immediately for the thieves and their charcoal gray moving van. Nancy continued her journey home, thinking of the Turners and their problems. I wonder why Mr. Josiah Crawley left all this money to the Tofflines and none to his other relatives. Why did he change his mind? Those Tofflines are well-to-do and don't need money as much as the Turners. Nancy did not know Richard Toffline, but she was acquainted with his wife, as well as his daughters. They were arrogant and unreasonable, and disliked by many of the shopkeepers in the town. Ada and Isabel had been unpopular in high school. They had talked incessantly of money and social position, making themselves very obnoxious to the other students. I wonder, Nancy thought, if a way can't be found so the Turners could get a share of the crowd money. I'll ask that. 5 minutes later, Nancy pulled into the double garage and hurried across the lawn to the kitchen door of the Drews' large red brick house. The building stood well back from the street and was surrounded by tall, beautiful trees. Hello, Nancy, greeted by the present, slightly blunt woman who opened the door. She was Hannah Grun, housekeeper for the Drews, who had helped rear Nancy since the death of the girl's own mother many years ago. Nancy gave her a hug, then asked, Dad home? I see his car is in the garage. Your father is in the living room and dinner will be ready in a few minutes. Nancy went to say hello to her tall, handsome father, then hurried to wash her hands and comb her hair before the three who formed the Drew household at dawn sat down to dinner. During the meal, Nancy related her adventure of the afternoon. What tricky thieves! Hannah Gruen burst out. Oh, I hope the police captured them. They certainly took advantage of those Turner sisters, Mr. Drew commented. Mary and Edna are in financial difficulties, Nancy commented. Isn't it a shame that Josiah Crowell didn't bequeath some of his estate to the Turners and other relatives who need the money? Cousin Drew smiled affectionately at his only child, then said, "Yes, it is, Nancy, but unless a well-written letter turns up, that's the way it has to be. That's the way it has to be." Oh my God. The Turner think there is another will, Nancy told him. Wouldn't it be wonderful if it can be found? I agree, spoke up Hannah. It's well known in town that Mrs. Toffan and her daughter were unkind to Josiah Crowell for some time before he died. Turner, the excuse was that Josiah's eccentricities were extremely trying. The Toffans have never been noted for any charitable inclinations, Mr. Drew observed with a smile. However, they did give Josiah a home, only because they knew he was going to leave all his money to them, said Hannah. If I had been Josiah, I wouldn't have stayed there. The housekeeper sighed. But when people get old, they don't like change, and probably he put up with things rather than move. She said the treatment the Toffan had accorded old Josiah Crowell had aroused a great deal of unfavorable comments throughout the River Heights. Nancy had not known him personally, but she had often seen the elderly man on the street. Secretly, she had regarded him as a rather nice, kindly person. His wife had died during an influenza epidemic, and after that he had made his home with various relatives. According to rumor, all these people had admitted that he had paid his board and done many favors for them. They in turn had been very kind to him, and though poor themselves, had tried to make Josiah Crowell comfortable and happy. Tell me everything you know about Mr. Crowell, Nancy urged her father. The lawyer said that the old man had publicly declared he intended to provide in his will for several deserving relatives and friends. Then, 3 years before his death, the Toffan family, who had never shown an interest in him, had experienced a sudden change of heart. They had begged Josiah Crowell to make his home with them, and at last he had consented. Shortly after he moved into the Toffan's house, Mr. Drew was told that the old man had decided to leave all his money to them. Mr. Crowell, though failing in health, maintained a firm grip on life. But as time went on, he became more and more unhappy. He continued to live with the Toffans, but it was whispered about that he frequently slipped away to visit his other relatives and friends, and that he intended to change his will again. Then there must be a later will, Nancy said hopefully. Mr. Drew nodded and went on. One day Josiah Crowell became critically ill. Just before his death, he attempted to communicate something to the doctor who attended him. But his words than were unintelligible. After the funeral, only one will came to light, giving the entire fortune to the Toffan. Dad, do you suppose Mr. Crowell was trying to tell the doctor something about another will, which he had put someplace where the Toffans couldn't find it? Nancy asked. Very likely, the lawyer replied. Probably he intended to leave his money to relatives who had been kind to him, but fate cheated him of the opportunity. Do you think anybody has looked for another will? Nancy questioned. I don't know, but I am sure of this. If another wolf shows up, Richard Olfen will fight it. The estate is considerable one, I understand, and they aren't the kind of people to share good fortune. Can't the present will be contested? Nancy asked. I hear that other relatives have filed a claim declaring they were told another will had been made in their favor. But unless it is located, I doubt that the matter will ever go further. But the Toffens don't deserve the fortune, Hannah Groen remarked. And besides, they don't need the money. It doesn't seem fair. It may not seem fair, but it is legal, Mr. Drew told her. And I am afraid nothing can be done about the situation. Poor Judy and her aunts, said Nancy. There are others affected in the same way, her father remarked. For instance, two young women who live on the river road. I don't know their names. I understand they were not related to Mr. Crowell, but were great favorites of his. They are having a struggle and could use some extra money. Nancy lapsed into silence. She felt strongly that a mystery lagged behind the Crowell case. Dad, don't you believe Josiah Crowell made a second will? Nancy questioned suddenly. You sound like a trial lawyer, the way you cross-examine me. Mr. Duke protested, but with evidence enjoyment. To tell the truth, Nancy, I don't know what to think, but something did happen which must indicate that Mr. Crowell at least intended to make another will. Please go on, Nancy begged impatiently. Well, one day nearly a year ago, I was in the First National Bank when Crowell came in with Henry Roasted, the attorney who specialized in will and other estate matters. Nancy inquired. Yes, I had no intention of listening to their conversation, but I couldn't help overhearing a few words that made me think they were discussing a will. Crowell made an appointment to call at Roadstead's office the following day. Oh, cried Nancy excitedly. That looks as though Mr. Crowell had made a new will. Doesn't it? But why didn't Mr. Roadstead say something about it at the time of Mr. Crowell's death? For one of many reasons, Mr. Drew replied. In the first place, he may never have drawn a new will for Mr. Crowell, and even if he did, the old man might have changed his mind again and torn it up. Before Nancy spoke again, she finished the delicious apple pudding which Hannah had made. Then she looked thoughtfully at her father. Dad, Mr. Roasted is an old friend of yours, isn't he? Yes, an old friend and college classmate. Then won't you please ask him if he ever drew up a will for Mr. Crowell, or knows anything that might solve this mystery? That's rather delicate question, young lady. He may tell me it's none of my business. You know he won't. You are such a good friend. He will understand why you are taking special interest in this case. Will you do it, please? I know you like to help people who are in trouble. Her father said, I suppose I could invite Mr. Roasted to have lunch with me tomorrow. Wonderful, Nancy interrupted eagerly. That would be a splendid opportunity to find out what he knows about a later war. All right, I will try to arrange a date. How about joining us? Nancy's face lighted up as she said, Oh, thank you, Dad. I'd love to. I hope it can be tomorrow, so we won't have to waste any time trying to find another one. Mr. Drew smiled. We? He said. You mean you might try to find a hidden will if Mr. Crowell wrote one? I might. Nancy's eyes sparkled in anticipation. Thank you very much for joining me to read this interesting story, and I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you like the way I read the story, and I hope you've taken some lessons out of what we just read. Please like, share my video, and leave a comment below. See you again in my next video. Bye.